Brandon, welcome to the podcast, mate. How are you doing this evening?
Thank you. I'm doing well. How are you?
All good, thanks, mate. All good. Looking forward to getting into this, chatting away. Um, as people have probably picked up, a lot of our British listeners probably picked up, you are uh, from one of our, or what should I say, one of our transatlantic cousins. Whereabouts in the States are you from? Where did you grow up?
Lincoln, Nebraska. Nebraska is where I live now. I grew up in Western Nebraska, small town, 300 people, but been in Nebraska my whole life, born and raised.
Is Lincoln the one with the big football stadium?
Yes. Yep. The University of Nebraska, Lincoln, the Huskers.
Yeah, so that's like one of the biggest stadiums in the country. It's like, what is it, like 100,000 people or something?
Oh, no, ours isn't big seating wise. I think Michigan, I think, has the biggest. Culturally, football is huge here.
Nice. Do you play sports yourself growing up?
Yep, I sure did. I was a three sport kid in small town Nebraska. I was football, basketball, track. That ended up serving me really well once I joined the Army. You know, already being pretty fit, being physical. I listened to coaches, teamwork. So yeah, sports was huge for me growing up.
So talk us through your kind of childhood a bit more, and like your kind of what kind of your values in terms of service to your country, what's kind of expected you as a member of your family and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's exactly where the book starts too. Is I try to give some background about where I grew up, and mainly my parents. Also, I'm a third generation Western Nebraska kid. Grandparents, farmer. Another side of the family was water well drillers. My mom was a teacher and then a counselor. We grew up in the country, hunting, fishing, camping, scuba diving. My dad was a well driller, a pilot, EMT, firefighter. I mean, just did everything. So the way we were raised was, be involved. We were ambitious. We didn't turn things down. Sports was big. Being outside, shooting, hunting. It was really the stereotypical rural American upbringing. Strong Christian values, love of family. Really, what you'd expect to see in like a movie or something, But all of that paid off enormously once I joined the Army. And when I was 16 years old is when 9/11 happened. And in the book, I write about that day. And that's where everything fell into place. That was when I knew. And I had no family in the military. A couple of great uncles that I never met were in the Navy in World War II, but I never really spoke to them. I never knew them. So I was coming from zero experience, 16 years old, 9/11 happened, and that was it. That changed the trajectory of the rest of my life.
I want to ask you a bit about 9/11 and some other things first, but I just got to ask you about your great uncles. I mean, Nebraska is that about as far as from the ocean as you can get?
Yeah, we're the only triple landlocked state.
So did they join? Like, was it just like potluck what they went into, or did they join the Navy because they wanted to kind of, get out on the ocean and kind of see something different to Nebraska?
I don't remember their stories much. I think Grandma said they were drafted, and they were older than her. The great, wild story is my grandma remembers that on her wedding day, it had been like 43. They got word. They got the telegram that the boat they were on actually got sunk.
Oh, God.
And, back then, that's all it was, hey, we can't tell you their status. All we know is this ship went down. And they got that on her wedding day. So all of her wedding pictures, everyone's real somber looking. And I remember her telling that story. But yeah, two brothers from Nebraska ended up in the Navy on the same boat, went down in 43, and they both survived. But the way news moved back then, it was weeks until they found out, hey, they survived.
So did you ever have any inclination that before 9/11 that you'd want anything to do with the military?
Never. It had never crossed my mind. I remember taking the ASVAB test, our armed forces test, right? They give it to every, I think, sophomore in high school. And that time I took it, and I knew I wasn't going to ever join the military. Never thought about it. So I remember we just blew through that test as fast as we could, because once we were done with that, we got the rest of the day off. And it was kind of a joke. And then a year or so later, all of a sudden that test score really mattered. And then I had to say, hey, let me take that again. I actually want to take it serious this time.
It's kind of wild. So they just come in and everyone has to do the test.
Yep. And they do that so that way the military keeps their standards up to date. Like, hey, if every 16-year-old in the country takes this every year, then we kind of know what our scores should be.
Right. Okay. And I guess as well, I mean, does it have anything? Because you guys, I don't know about your state specifically, but I know some states you have to, when you, as a guy, as a male, if you go to get a driver's license, you have to sign up for the draft. Is that correct?
Yep. We still do that. Yeah. The selective service.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Obviously not a thing. It's not a thing over here. But yeah. So I guess they've got all those ASFABs in the back of their pocket, ready to roll with that selective service. So what can you talk us through 9/11 for you then, and then how that changed the trajectory? Sorry, trajectory for you.
Absolutely. That morning I showed up to school. I remember parking in the parking lot, and I got out of the car, and another buddy yells over. He also just parked too, and he's like, "Hey, you guys hear the radio? Some drunk guy just crashed his plane into the World Trade Center." And we laughed because that was all the news we had. It had just happened. Details were sketchy, and we're like, "Haha, that sounds funny." And then once we got inside, and actually the cameras, the news footage started coming up, and we realized it was much bigger than a drunk guy crashing a plane. And that was the rest of the day. It was surreal, sitting in the library, watching TVs, teachers crying. The day was, it was really, I don't know what to say, traumatic. It was surreal. At my age, I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know how I was supposed to feel until that night. 4:00 in the afternoon, we go out for football practice, just because that's what you do. We're trying to keep things as, somewhat normal daily schedule. So we're all outside at football practice, and I remember looking up at the sky and seeing no contrails. Every flight was grounded across the whole country. That was the first time in my life I'd ever seen that. I'd never seen an empty sky like that before. And then that's when the first, real emotion hit me. Like, my brain figured out what it is I was feeling, and it was pure anger. I was so pissed off that someone could exert that kind of control over our country. And that anger was the initial motivator right there. So that night I go home. I don't even remember talking to my parents about it that night. I rummaged around and found the first recruiter's phone number that I could, a pen or a business card or something that a recruiter had left at the school. And it just so happened to be the Nebraska National Guard. And I remember I called that recruiter that night, which I'm sure he was answering the phone all day.
Yeah.
And his first response was, "How old are you, boy?" So I'm 16, sir. All right, you call me back when you're 17. Click. That was it. Mm-hmm. And so, 3 months later, I turned 17. I called him back. My parents had to sign the papers since I was 17, and they knew there was no stopping me, so they didn't try to talk me out of it. They were worried. They were scared, as anybody would be, but they understood my motivation. They respected what I wanted to do and why. So, they were worried, but they knew my mind was made up. That's what I was doing. So they never once tried to talk me out of it.
Yeah, that's really interesting as well. That in that 3-month period that you didn't wane, on the feeling either, because I think a lot of people probably maybe fell out that day, and then an obstacle comes up and you get back into your life, you have a bit of time to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
So
No.
you don't want to go. Talk us through basic training and what you learned about yourself while you were there.
Oh yeah, that's a really pivotal moment, and not just in a military career, as a human being. You know, the development, the things you learn about yourself, your psyche, your mental toughness or lack thereof. You learn so much about yourself at basic training. And I was 18 years old when I went, so I was a kid, you know, especially a naive kid from small town Nebraska. There was so much I was shielded from growing up, you know, in the country of, you know, rural part of a Western state. So it was a huge eye opener. But the biggest thing I write about in the book is one night we were coming back from a night range of some type, and they're marching us. It's a mile or so from the ranges to the main road where the buses were waiting. It's like 2 a.m. and a thunderstorm hits while we're marching. Drill sergeants are like, damn, lightning. We gotta put you under this this little shelter. So we're all hanging out under this shelter, waiting for the storm to pass. And I remember I was wet, I was cold, I was tired, I was hungry, I was sore. I was starting to get homesick. And I took just a quick look at my current situation, and I remember it made me laugh because I realized this is it. This isn't. This is the worst condition I have ever felt in my life, and I'm still functioning. In fact, it's not that bad. That was a huge realization of, you know what, you can push yourself a long ways before you're going to give up. You know, your brain, mental toughness is everything, and that realization that stuck with me, you know, to this day. Just the value of mental toughness. And it's sad that a lot of people, you know, especially in civilian walks of life, they never get there. No one's going to voluntarily put themselves in that situation to discover that about themselves. But there's a lot of value to that. That was the biggest turning point for me.
Yeah, you're right, man. I'm not gonna try and remember the quote now, but I know that there's a quote along those lines from like even back in the ancient Greek days, you know, which is mad because we always think now, oh, people have got soft now, but this quote from this ancient Greek guy, I'll dig it out in a minute, but he's essentially saying that like, you know, what a shame it is that, you know, someone can go through life without ever knowing what their body was capable of and stuff. And
Yes. Yeah.
well, you say like sometimes you need an organizational thing to take you to that point. And then like, yeah, when you get there, and especially if you got good company as well, I think, you know, if you're in company in those situations as well, it helps as well to have that humor.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. The way a group of high achievers can just pull you along, the way you play up to your peers. That was a huge one I learned, you know, later on in my career, as I went through. You know, I became an NCO, then became an officer, engineer officer, PSD school. You know, each level that you move up, the people around you keep getting better. They're smarter, they're tougher, they're faster, and the standards keep getting higher. And there's a lot of imposter syndrome for me, anyways, where I'm like, my gosh, these guys are amazing. I don't know if I belong here. But you know, after a few weeks, you look around and realize, hey, I can do this. And it's because of the people around you. You play up. You don't want to let your buddy down. You don't want to, you know, embarrass the team. And so you just do whatever it is that's required. And that's another beautiful thing that's hidden in the military that a lot of walks of life don't get to experience.
What are the you know, the motivations for your, you know, your fellow recruits when you're doing doing this boot camp? You know, you've gone because of patriotic reasons, the way you felt on 9/11. Is that the majority of people there, or you know, like what's the kind of the You know, the kind of
Yeah,
depth that you've
it
got.
was, I'd say it was a 60-40. I bet 60% of us were there directly motivated because of 9/11. Um, active duty side, unfortunately, you get a lot of people who are, you know, starting over in life. You know, maybe they got in some trouble. They can't hold a job. You know, the Army is kind of their like, well, nothing else worked. This is my last shot. And thankfully that works out for a lot of them. Unfortunately, that does put some turds in the pipeline. It's like, hey, if you didn't make it on the civilian side, you're definitely not going to make it here, buddy. But 60%, I'd say, were directly motivated by 9/11.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but National Guard, you guys do the same basic training as the regular Army, right?
Yep. All of our schools are exactly the same. It's just that we are administratively owned by the state. So the governor is our first line commander in chief. However, we since early in the global war on terror, laws changed, making us an operational reserve. So we can be, you know, made active duty, you know, the Title 10 status really easily. So that's when all the National Guard mobilizations really took off.
Yeah, and what role have you gone into MOS and that kind of thing?
When I was enlisted, they made me a cook because I had no idea what I was going to do. No experience, you know, no one could guide me. So for about 2 months, I was in the kitchen and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. So very quickly, I went and trained with we had truck drivers, mechanics. We had a cav squadron in the state of Nebraska. We had competition shooting. So I did everything I possibly could to never do my MOS. And that worked great. I made E5 sergeant and then immediately went to officer candidate school. Through OCS, I then got engineer as my branch. And that's what I stayed for the rest of my 20 years was an engineer officer. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I think the saying is that, you know, the military chef course is the hardest course there is. No one's ever passed it. So, or the hardest election, whatever. But yeah, the early days as well, you know, where you kind of get molded is obviously quite important. Did you have anyone during these first few years for you where you had any like particular mentors who helped shape you into a soldier?
Absolutely. And so I had no family to look at for military advice. You know, my mom and dad were amazing when it came to, you know, work ethic, standards, teamwork. My parents were amazing. You know, my dad left some huge example for me to fill with all of the things he did. So that's where the mindset came from. But the military side, I had a dear friend in high school. His dad, Jim Helm, was a special forces medic from Vietnam, clear up into the 90s. He did 20 some years in special operations as a medic and then an instructor. And he pulled me aside in high school. So that spring, right before I left for basic training, it was a track season. And Jim was, you know, he was an intense dude, you know, man of few words. He pulled me aside and I never forget. He said, you volunteer for everything. You be the first, you be the first one to volunteer, first one to raise your hand, you know, push yourself. It's like, you need to want the ball, be out front. And, you know, absolutely. You got it. Which was the exact opposite of everything these, the World War II, Korea, the older guys around my hometown, once they heard that I was joining, they would give me the exact opposite of their advice. They said, blend in, keep your head down, keep your mouth shut, don't volunteer for anything. And then here's Jim, this special operator, saying the exact opposite. And I'm like, wait, I would much rather have a career that looks like Jim Helm's career than these guys who got, you know, drafted and didn't want to be there. You know, God bless them, but that wasn't their plan. So yeah, Jim Helm's words, you know, a crusty Green Beret instructor, his words stuck with me. And I talk about him a lot in the book. His words kept popping up throughout my 20 years. That reminder from a guy like that to want the ball. You be first, raise your hand.
When you're in the Guard, like how much of a commitment is it then? Like what's your, over the course of a year, kind of like the Guard and like your civilian life balance?
Yeah.
And what have you got going on in your civilian life?
So when I first joined, 18 years old, it was basically I could be as involved as you really wanted to be. By the book, it was, a 1 weekend a month and then a 2-week annual training in the summer, plus whatever schools you needed. If you needed a leadership school or another MOS qual, something like that, then that was on top of it. But if you wanted to, you could volunteer for, special missions, state active duty roles, additional schools, shooting competitions. You could be as involved as you wanted. And I was in college at the time, so I jumped on every opportunity I could. Like, yeah, put me on orders. You got some, even if it's a mundane, moving some trucks from this armory to that armory, put me on, let me do it. It's as involved as you want to be. And now that was, 2003, 2004. Now, after GWAT, the way our Department of War has changed, the way the culture has changed within the military, it's very easy to be a full-time National Guardsman.
Right. So when you were at college then, is your tuition and stuff taken care of by the National Guard as well?
It was, yeah. There was great benefits then, and even more so now. I think the bonuses have gone down a little bit just since we're not in a wartime. But yeah, all of my college was paid for, as well as a monthly stipend through the VA, plus a drill check, just from being on orders, for drill and training and things. And so yeah, it didn't impact college much, and it was a good paycheck, and it paid for college, all the way up to, there's been a lot of guys who ended up with master's degrees or were able to hand down unused parts of their benefits to their kids. So education-wise, it's amazing.
Oh my God. That's crazy. I know every British person listening to right now is like, what? Your kids can get benefits? It's like, wow.
Yeah, my kids right now. My son just graduated college. He didn't pay a cent. He has a tuition waiver from my service.
That's unbelievable. Yeah, I'm brilliant. So how long since you kind of joined, obviously for because of 9/11? When does it start to come, like, get onto the horizon that you're going to do deployment?
As soon as I got to officer candidate school. So I was a young E5. I was 20 years old when I made E5, and right away the leadership said, "Hey, you're going to officer candidate school." So Roger, here I go. OCS is where the op tempo really picked up. Things became much more serious, a lot more intense. Engineer school, while I was at my engineer basic officer course, Nebraska reached out and said, "We have a team going to Afghanistan. We need an engineer." And instant yes, absolutely, let's go. So I had orders for my first deployment before I had even graduated officer basic course. I knew that I was going to come home, join the unit, and head overseas.
When was that deployment, and how was it, saying goodbye to your family and everything for the first time?
That was 2008, and there's a whole chapter in my book about the day, one of the days that I was getting ready to leave. It was it's 9/19/08, September 19th, 2008. We were doing our pre-mobilization trainings, like the last 30 days of different tasks and qualifications before you actually head overseas. And we were at Camp Atterbury, Indiana. About that time, my second daughter, Millie, was about to be born. And so I took, an emergency, like a 48-hour leave or a pass, flew home to Lincoln, got to spend, a whole 24 hours. Millie was born early that morning, got to spend all day with her. The next morning, I left the hospital, got back on a plane, and within 3 days, we were in Afghanistan. So I had one day with my brand new baby girl, and I did not see her for just over 11 months.
Wow, dude.
Yeah, that was tough. In the book, I write about it as it was a painful day, but the big lesson that every service member feels is that duty, that obligation to do something that hurts. Nobody wants to leave their family. Nobody wants to, break your kid's heart or your wife's heart, your parents' heart. Like you don't want to, and they're angry at you. They have their emotions, but this is what I have to do. This is my duty. It's not that I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And that dichotomy, oof, yeah, that's heavy the first time you feel it. And I think it's heavy every time, but you learn to deal with it differently. You learn to frame it differently in your mind and in your heart. Unfortunately, sometimes you just shove it down. You just don't think about it. You got to just be cold about some of that pain, because it hurts too much you can't stay in it.
So what was your unit mission on the first deployment?
Oh, it was really, really unique. It was one of those that sets the Guard apart in what our capabilities are. None of our MOSs mattered. We was an agricultural development team. So the idea of the mission was we took people, Nebraska Guardsmen who had experience with, heavy machinery, irrigation, crops, fertilizing, animal husbandry, farming and agricultural backgrounds. Your MOS didn't matter. What mattered was what civilian skills did you bring to the table. I grew up, like as I said, my dad's side of the family was well drilling. So I grew up around well drilling and irrigation, and then I became an engineer. So it just so happened that my resume was exactly what they were looking for. And the mission of this team, it was counterinsurgency under the guise of agriculture. So wealthy Afghan landowner, he's being tugged between the Taliban saying, hey, let us bury these IEDs. Let us farm your poppy, give us money. He knows that they're the bad guys, but hey, they're in power. He's got to hedge his bets. So we have to come with a better offer and say, hey, don't work with the Taliban. Tell you what, how about we drill you a well? We give you some modern irrigation techniques. We teach you about, different fertilizers. We bring you up to date on the latest and greatest agricultural stuff, so you can make money, the right way instead of getting in bed with the Taliban. That was our offer, right? Mm-hmm. Like, hey, you either work with us and become a better farmer, and we'll give you funding and technology, and we'll help you out. Or if you don't, well, we know where you live, huh? So that was the gist of our mission. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. Unfortunately, there was a lot of wasted money. They would say, oh, you're gonna drill me a well? Cool. So we spend, $100,000 drilling a well, and then he sides with the Taliban anyways. Mm. Yeah, a lot of corruption. It got pretty messy, but the mission meant well, that's for sure. It was something I believed in.
Whereabouts in Afghanistan are you on this, and what's your role, like specifically, yourself within this kind of wider agricultural development team?
Yeah, we were stationed at Bagram Airfield, and then worked north out of Bagram into Kapisa, Panjshir, and Bamiyan provinces. So up into the mountains. I split my time between, I would be engineering officer for anything related to irrigation or well drilling. So usually it was just evaluating a well here or an irrigation system there. Most of my time I spent as a assistant platoon leader on the security forces side, since so much of engineering at that time, the engineer basic course is combat heavy or combat light engineering. So it's patrolling, it's route clearance, it's route security, very combat arms focused. And so there was only a few of us with maneuver or combat arms background. So they put us in charge of we had our own security force platoon, 27 guys, four heavy squads with trucks and heavy weapons. So we ran our own patrols. We were responsible for our own movement. And that was a lot of fun. I learned so much, about leadership, keeping up with the tactics on the ground as they evolved. That was really an amazing part of that deployment. It's the fun part. It's the part that, the 20-something-year-old lieutenant, that's what you hope a deployment is like,
And like, obviously on any deployment, there's moments that, kind of shape the rest of your life, not just not just shape the deployment. So were there any of those moments for you on that first tour?
There were for sure. One specifically, I write about it in the book, and it is the turning point of my book where, everything kind of changes color as far as not just my career, my leadership style, my mental health. It was one of those moments that like 9/11, it shaped the rest of my life for sure. And it wasn't even a kinetic mission. There wasn't a shot fired, but I was the patrol leader. And I don't want to give away too much of the details because I want people to go buy the book. But at the end of the day, I was left with a decision that had no right answer. And it ended up in an innocent Afghan child losing their life. And there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. I was stuck. And that feeling of being responsible, you're the patrol leader. This is your call. And there is absolutely nothing you can do about it. You're forced to make a bad decision. That haunted me forever. It took me a long time to process that. The other bad, there's always the bad days of there's smells, there are sights, sounds, rockets, those scary parts, those adrenaline filled parts. You're almost ready for those. You're training, you're there on patrol. Just the nature of what we do. A part of your brain is expecting those things. It's those cold moments when you're not expecting things to all of a sudden become life and death, and there's no action. It's not exciting, and it just hits you in the face as you're not ready for it. That's, to me, those ended up being the things that I had to unpack years later.
So when you come back from that first point, I think you said it was 11 months, did you say?
Yeah, from 2008 to 2009, we were over there, almost pretty much right out a year once you counted pre-mob training.
Yeah. And so when you get back then, like, how have you changed as a person? And, presumably, you've gone away as a young man, you're a young husband, a young father. What's different when you come back?
That's all hindsight now. Looking back at the time, I was still too immature to realize the ways I'd changed. More aggressive, but that comes with confidence and experience. Short temper, blowing up at people. But I found quickly that I had to stay in the culture. As long as I stayed around other military folks. So I instantly became a pre-mobilization instructor for the National Guard. So I was now a full-time trainer, and that culture, I was able to hide it because you're around the same type of people. So, being aggressive, being loud, drinking, partying, those were coping mechanisms, but they weren't frowned upon. As long as you stay in your tribe, a lot of unhealthy behavior gets excused, and it works for a while. It took years until finally I had 2 divorces and a lot of problems that I finally sat and looked back and said, "Oh man, I've been lying to myself for a long time." And yeah, that started 2009, 2010, as soon as I got back and realized the world is much different than I thought it was a year ago.
Do you think the deployment lengths that the U.S. Army do are too long?
Yeah, I do. Because right after my second deployment, they changed it to 9 months. During my whole career, Special Operations Forces was at most 6 months, usually 90 days. And it just seems like that model is so much better for soldiers' mental health. The problem with that model is our type of mission. When we were doing counterinsurgency that relied on large-scale projects, funding through contracting, building relationships with landowners, that's takes a lot of time to get an Afghan warlord to trust you enough to work on his farm. And so you need a year to grow those relationships, to make that mission work the way it was supposed to, the way it was designed to. But it is hard on people. Divorces, alcoholism, suicide was rampant when we got back. So
yeah, I mean, like other guys. Sorry, mate, go.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, out of because you've got a platoon there, like, I don't expect you to know the exact number, but I mean, is it quite common that people are breaking up with partners while they're on deployment, breaking up with them when they get back? It's such a long time to sustain a relationship under those conditions.
Yeah. So our 27-man, thinking back now, I bet there was 4 divorces with 3 suicides.
Jeez.
Yeah, it was rough. It's a long time to be away, especially young guys doing kinetic types, stressful, day in and day out. You're just under stress. That does a lot to a person. That's another topic I touch about in the book is missions that went right.
Yeah.
There are still moments where even a mission that goes right, there's still moments where there's a person, there's a vehicle, we're watching, there's every indicator that something is about to go wrong. Your thumb is on the selector switch, you're at the high ready, and you're just sitting in that moment. And that amount of stress that just sits, especially on a young person. Now do that, every day for, 50, 60 missions. That takes a toll on the human, the chemicals in your brain, your nervous system. It's not made to be under that kind of stress like that.
Right. And it's at the formative age too, right? Your brain's still literally forming it, and until it's your mid-20s, I think. So so you mentioned kind of throwing yourself into the guard and things because that's where that's where the behaviors that were feeling natural to you at that point are kind of accepted. Are you looking to get away on another deployment as well? Is that something you want to do, get back out there?
Not initially. It was my first divorce pretty much was a product of that first deployment. And so once I was, I'm a single man again. I'm still full time for the National Guard doing operations. And that's when it was like, you know what? My kids are happy and healthy. They're young, but they're good, functioning kids. They're happy and healthy. I'm a single man. Let's get out of here. Let's go back to Afghanistan. That's one of those where it wasn't so much duty. It was, I'm ready to go back and do work in the tribe, the culture, the climate that I like. I was you get indoctrinated to that lifestyle, and it's so addictive. It is a mistress to be with the guys running those types of missions. So I was ready to go back. And so in 2013, another one of those agricultural teams popped up. We actually ran 4 of them. And so I was on number 1, and then I ended up also going on number 4. However, on number 4, rather than being a 50-man team with its own security platoon, we were now a 12-man team who we were just running counterinsurgency operations. So we were the principals on this one. I used to doing PSD work on the first one, where we're taking the important people to the meeting. Now I was the important people, allegedly. Right. So totally different dynamic. By that time I was a captain. I was 30. So very different mindset. And we were down south. We were in Helmand, based out of Lashkar, working with your brothers and sisters down there. Great folks. I loved working with the Brits and the Danes. Amazing. Love you guys. But yeah, that was a very different time. I was ready to go. It was a different type of mission. Completely night and day difference. Even the countryside, going from the mountains on my first deployment to the Helmand River Valley on the second, night and day difference.
I mean, what's your opinion then, as a Nebraskan from agricultural background? Is the Helmand River Valley, like, is it in that part of the world, is that good agricultural country?
Mm-hmm. It was, but it's super isolated. So they have it's a river delta, essentially, a pretty wide, shallow river that has been there for a long, long time. So there's a lot of deposits, but it's so central. There's no rain, but it's a good, healthy river. So that Helmand River is your only source of irrigation. So you have to manage it really carefully. And that's something Afghans aren't good at, is managing anything, let alone managing it carefully. So that was a huge problem. Managing this irrigation system that was built by the Soviets, that has now fallen into disrepair for the last 50 years, controlled by corrupt officials who talk to the Taliban at night and then sit in meetings with you during the day. So, they have their own agenda. They really just want money. I try to talk to them about irrigation and hydrology, and they could care less. They want some American dollars so they can funnel it to the Taliban. Very frustrating. Very frustrating.
And what about the situation on the ground, in terms of what's going on? Like you said, you're living with the Brits and stuff.
Yeah. It was, you guys were out there banging all the time, man. I feel like we did a fallen soldier ceremony once a month over there. It was rough. You guys were doing a lot of route clearance, a lot of security patrols, mounted patrols down there and out of Lashkar. I know the SAS had a team down there doing intelligence operations. It was busy for you guys. It was tough, really tough to watch you guys lose young British soldiers. God, that was hard. I mean, out there in formation.
Yeah, like I guess you kind of said it then, and obviously, like, this was God, I'm losing track of time now. It feels like a few months ago that obviously there was a bit of a controversy about this because of the president and the vice president's comments about, British troops not being on the front line in these things. So, for you as someone who joined up, for 9/11, and then that's obviously the road that led to, you, the Danes, the Brits, and many more being in Afghanistan. You know, like what I guess, like rather than with hindsight, what's it like at the time, kind of knowing that all these people from all these different corners of the world have come to this place, a very alien place in a lot of ways, because of that incident that happened, you know, and that day where you remember there was no planes in the sky.
Mm-hmm. It meant the world to me. You know, I felt like it was a deeply personal thing to see, you know, Kiwis, Canadians, Danes, Brits, Poles, Germans, all there with us. It's humbling. You know, I'm grateful. They, you know, all you guys made the same sacrifice for a country that isn't yours. You know, a country that, you know, a lot of European countries don't love America, but there you were anyways. You know, you've seen this attack. You believed, like we did, that you know, there is justice to be had, and you made the sacrifice for it. So yeah, to hear politicians talk shit like that, like, you have no idea. They don't know what they're talking about. The bond that we had, especially with the Brits and the Danes, we shared an office space with a sergeant major and a captain, the British guys, who were amazing. You know, eat with them, hang out with them, have tea. It was wonderful. You know, that's what soldiering is. That's one of those tribal things where you put soldiers together anywhere in the world, even if there's a language barrier, we're going to feel safe. We're going to feel understood. And that was really special. It's a great feeling.
I mean, that kind of comes back to that thing you were saying earlier about how many. It's almost because, like you're saying about that story about when you're in the rain and you're tired and you're hungry and everything like that. It is like a membership of that club, right? Regardless of reality, you've been in the cold, wet, tired, hungry club. You know, and that, you know, it's the same way, like, you get a couple of gym bros in a bar and they're going to end up talking to each other. Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, obviously there's so much in the book that that we can't touch on in this because it's, you know, we've only got an hour, but just kind of talk us through. I'm gonna have to skip over a lot of stuff, which is why the book exists. People can go and get it. It'll be at the end. Everything linked up down the show notes for people to go and get. But I guess kind of jumping ahead, like when you come back from this second deployment, how does that kind of transition go for you?
Oh, that is when everything came to a head. So at that point, I'm 31 years old. I was single, but was about to get a girlfriend, you know, single dad. And I was given a company command as soon as I got home. And that kind of confidence, and then being placed in a company command, still hadn't dealt with problems that I started growing on my first deployment, you know. So now we're looking at 5-6 years later, still things that I haven't addressed. I'm still covering it up with, you know, booze, women, motorcycles, danger, whatever I can do to, you know, force those feelings down. So that I got married, was in company command, and that marriage only lasted 3 years, I think, because I was irresponsible. I was unhealthy. I refused to acknowledge that I had some serious problems that I just wasn't dealing with. It was ego. You know, being a company commander just fed that part of me that believed as long as I go harder, you know, be more intense, that things are going to work out. You know, you can go faster and faster and faster, but eventually you have to pay the piper. And that's what happened. My second marriage ended. I finally broke down. I ended up in a hospital. I ended up doing a month of inpatient treatment. Rough. It was a rough couple years. Really, really rough. But I did the work. You know, I'm not a big fan of meds, but got on some medication. I did a lot of counseling. I did a lot of reading, and it was hard work, but they definitely all had to start for sure. I was on a bad path, and it all just balled up. I can't blame just the second deployment. I can't blame just the first. It was everything, from
Sure.
2008 till 2014. I just refused to be healthy about the life I was living and the trauma that I had.
I mean, when the Afghanistan pullout happened as well, did that have any particular effect on you?
That was a horrible day. I remember I was running an errand. I was on my way back, driving home, and stopped to grab lunch real quick. And I'm sitting at this, sports bar, having a burger. And there on the news was the images that, that's it. Kabul's gone. These are the last planes leaving, the Afghans dropping off of the C-17s. Like, that's it. It's over. We lost. That I sat in that bar for the next 5 hours. I was pissed off. I was texting people, calling some other Army buddies. It was ugly. That was a really ugly day. The feeling of my entire adult life from age 17 to 37 was just erased. It's all gone. All of those soldiers we lost, the eyes, the limbs, the personal traumas, the marriages, all of the sacrifices, gone. That was horrible. That was a hard day. Since then, I've learned to reframe it. You can't zoom out like that and say it's all erased, because that's just too much. You can't do that with anything in life. You have to zoom in and pay attention to the details and the facts. And we did help people. It may have been that Afghan individual, that kid, that family, that farm. Those Afghans who they were caught up in it. They weren't Taliban. They were just trying to raise a family. They're the same as you and me. Those Afghans, we were able to help. It might have just been for one day. It might have been for a year, but there were ones that we helped. We did good, on that day, on that mission, for that person. We did good. And that's what you have to focus on. You have to look at it that way. I remember one mission I'll carry this one in my heart forever. A PRT, a reconstruction team, called me to come look at a well. So I joined their patrol. We go out to this girls' school, which, in 2009, that was a new thing, a girls' school in Afghanistan, unheard of. And they had just drilled a drinking well. I remember when we rolled up, there were little girls outside dipping their cups into the ditch, drinking water out of the road ditch. Like, what the hell is going on? Like, well, the well, it's just not pumping water. So we pulled it. The well is good. It's got water in it. The pump is good. Electricity is good. The pressure tank's good. I don't know what's wrong with this well. So finally, I'm just looking at it, and I count the how many lengths of pipe there are, and there's not enough drop pipe to get to the water level. This crooked contractor took the money, put in the well, and split. Didn't put enough pipe to even get it to the water level. So I'm like, all right, you need 40 more feet of drop pipe, put it back in, turn it on. A day later, that girls' school had running water. And that meant the world to me. Like, wow, I actually went and solved the problem. And now little girls are going to school in Afghanistan with water. God, that made me feel so good. So, where are those girls at today? Is that school still there? It doesn't do any good to think about that. I have to think about, hey, my time when I was there, I did my job and I helped people. That's what I have to focus on.
As we've been talking, mate, a few times you've talked about lessons and things. Is that something that, the same way that you've had to reframe the pullout and reframe like the way that you look at the what you had control over, and what you did when you had those moments of control. Are lessons something that you went back looking for, rather than necessarily knowing what they were at the time?
Absolutely. With age, it's just something that comes as I look back on things, positive and negative. I look back on things that I didn't realize were good at the time. I look back on things that I didn't realize were harmful at the time. That's just the trick of, youth is wasted on the young. But that is that's the thing that started this book. I became a grandpa about 6 months ago. So about 6 months before that, when we found out we were going to be grandparents, I started writing some things down because there's so much I don't know about my grandparents and great grandparents that I wish they would have wrote down. So I have to be the one. Then I'm going to start writing, and I wrote it in the form of life lessons. So it's my military memoir written to an audience of a grandchild who is 20, 21 and curious about their grandpa. Well, I'm not just going to tell you war stories. I'm not going to make me sound awesome. I want to tell you lessons that it took me 40 years to figure out, that you can take with you. So that is the point of this book, is those lessons. And it was therapeutic for me even to sit down and go over all of these events again, all of these mistakes, all of these lessons. Like I said, things that I didn't realize at the time. When you're 25, something doesn't hit you the same as when you're looking back at it at 40. So that's the crux of the book, is don't make the mistakes I made. Here are the lessons I learned, the good, the bad. It doesn't do anyone any good if I just sit on these. If I can help some, a grandchild or even some young NCO, young officer, young leader, these aren't just military lessons either. These are life lessons. It was so therapeutic for me to write it, and the feedback I've gotten so far from other veterans, first responders, it's just been so humbling, because they're lessons and things that we all go through.
Yeah, I love that, mate. It's a really good way of looking back at your life, even the painful bits, and finding some good to go. If you can stop someone else from going through that, then, because that's what the whole idea of you joining at 9/11 is, because you didn't want those things to happen again to other people, right? So it's kind of fulfilled its purpose in a roundabout way, maybe not the way you intended, but you've kind of found that way of giving service to other people, even though the mission in Afghanistan didn't go the way any of us wanted it to.
I got to end my military career along that same lines. My last assignment before I retired, I got to be an officer candidate school instructor back at the same officer candidate school that I had gone to, 15 years before. I got to be an instructor, and to teach these young candidates in a classroom setting and be able to put my experience in, that was so rewarding. Just a perfect way to bookend a career by like you said, by giving back. It felt incredible.
So, mate, I've got one more question at the end, but before we get to that, the floor is yours if you want to let people know where you can get the book, or if you have any pearls of wisdom you want to pass on, anything like that, mate. The floor is yours.
Oh, great. Yeah. If I can drop one lesson, it would be take care of your people, whether you're civilian, NCO, officer. Love the people under you, love your friends. And that's not just a word. Actually say that. Tell your friends you love them. Treat your people like you love them. People matter in every walk of life, especially in the military. Take care of people. The book is called Authority Without Control. It's available on Amazon, paperback, hardback, and it's about to be an audiobook any day now. It should be launched as an audiobook. And it is just my memoir and life lessons. I hope everyone can get something out of it, and I appreciate the support.
Well, mate, I will link everything up down in there now. And, what better way? Just transition straight from this, listeners. Get that audio book. get straight onto there seamlessly. All right, bro. Well, thanks so much for your time, mate. Really enjoyed the chat. And final question, mate. Would you do it all again?
I would do it all again. I would do it differently, but I would do it all again.